In today's video lesson, we're going to be talking about composed figures again and how to find the volume of composed figures. Okay, so let's review some of our vocabulary. First of all, we have volume. Volume is the amount of space that something takes up inside of an object. We find volume with 3D objects with 3 dimensions. Usually those dimensions are length, width, and height. Rectangular prisms is mainly what we work with. The formula for volume, we know the formula for volume is length times width times height. And then a composed figure is a figure with more than one shape put together to make a new shape. So we are going to practice finding the volume of a composed shape again today. So right now we have this shape in front of us, and we need to split this shape in order to get 2 different shapes that we can find the volume of, and then add those 2 shape values together. So I'm going to do this one with you, so make sure that you're following along and writing notes in your notebook as we go. So first of all, I think I'm going to split this shape by drawing a line here, and then also drawing a line here to show that I have 2 different shapes, one being a rectangular prism here, and then one being a rectangular prism here. I'm going to label these 2 shapes. I'm going to call this one A and this one B. That way when I do the volume of them, I'm not getting them confused. So let's start with shape A. So let's pull out our length, width, and height, because we know that volume equals length times width times height. So we need those 3 measurements in order to find the volume. Okay, so my length of shape A is 2 feet. I can tell that because right here would be the length of the shape. My width is 10 feet, and my height is 4 feet. Now remember what we said, that it didn't matter what order you thought that the length, width, and height went in, because when we multiply them all together, the commutative property says it doesn't matter what order they go in, we're going to get the same answer anyways. So I have to multiply all of these numbers together, so I have 2 times 10 times 4. So first of all, I know that 2 times 4 is 8 times 10 will give us 80. So the volume of our rectangular prism A is going to be 80 feet cubed. But we're not done yet because that was only one piece of this composed figure. Next we're going to move on to B. And so figure B is this figure right here. Okay, so let's figure out what our length, width, and height is for figure B. Now, for this one, we might have to do some, might have to use some critical thinking in order to figure out what all these measurements are. So first of all, our length is how long the figure is. Now, originally, before we split the 2 figures, we can see that this whole length right here was 11 feet. Well, since we cut it, we know that this length right here is not going to be a whole 11 feet. So we have to figure out how are we going to find just the length of the figure B. So one way I can do that is I can say, okay, so if this whole side was 11 feet, and I know that the height or the length of figure A was 2 feet, I know that this 2 feet subtracted from this whole length here is going to give me this one length. So 11 minus 2 is 9, so I know that this section right here is all 9 feet. So you're looking at this 9 feet plus 2 feet is going to give me a full length of 11 feet. See how those can be the same? So that means that my length for figure B is 9 feet. My width is going to be how wide the figure is, so the width is right here. And so we can see that on figure A, the width on this side was 10 feet. The width is going to be the same thing on both sides here. So the width is 10 feet. And the height is right here, and that is 2 feet. So now I can multiply these all together. 9 times 10 times 2. All right, so I know that, 9 times 2 is 18 times 10 will give us 180. So now I just have to add my two volumes together, 80 plus 180. I get 260, so that means that my final volume for this shape is 260 feet cubed. All right, I want you to pause this video, go ahead and cut this composed figure into two smaller figures, and find the volume. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this composed figure. So you'll see that I started some of my work here. I'm going to start by going over how I cut this figure. So what I did to cut this figure was I drew a line right here so that I made one rectangular prism here and one rectangular prism here. And I labeled these A and B. I'm actually going to start by explaining B first because I already have all the measurements for that and I don't really have to solve anything. So my length for figure B is 6 centimeters. My width for figure B is 4 centimeters, and my height for figure B is 3 centimeters, so 6 times 4 times 3 will give me the volume. 4 times 3 is 12, and I know 12 times 6 is 72, so that means that the volume for figure B is 72 centimeters squared. Let's go back to figure A. For figure A, I know that the length is 3 centimeters, and I know the width is 4 centimeters, but I had a hard time trying to figure out the height. I wonder if you did too. What I said to myself was that, okay, I have here this whole shape with a length of 12 centimeters. But then I remembered that, well, I cut this shape right here, so that means that this whole thing can't be 12 centimeters because I cut it. So I had to try to figure out what just this length from here to here would be. So then I said to myself, okay, if the height of figure B is 3 centimeters, that means that this length must be 3 centimeters. And so if I subtract that 12 centimeters minus 3 centimeters, then that means that this section right here must be 4 centimeters. So my height for figure A would be 4 centimeters. So then I can multiply 3 times 4 times 4. So I know that 4 times 4 is 16 times 3 is going to give me 48. And now I can take my two volumes and add them together. 48 plus 72 gives me a total of 120 centimeters cubed. Okay, this is going to be the last one. Pause the video, solve it, and then replay the video to see if your answers were correct. Alright, I know this might look crazy, but let's go over it together so that you can check your work. So first of all, I cut my shape across right here to make a rectangular prism here and a rectangular prism here. And then I labeled it A and B. So let's start with the rectangular prism A. My length is 4 meters, my width is 12 meters, and my height I had to figure out. It told me that my total height here was 13 meters, and I know that this height right here also matches this height right here. So I know that this one was 5 meters. So I had to say to myself, okay, 13 minus 5 will give me how much this one is. So 13 minus 5 is 8. So I knew that the height of A, figure A, was 8 meters. So 4 times 12 times 8. I did 4 times 8, which gave me 32. 32 times 12, you can see my work over here. I used standard algorithm to try to figure that out. And so I know that the volume of figure A is 384. So now we got to go down to figure B. So I have figure B here. My length, I also had to kind of figure out. My length would be this right here. And so I had to say to myself, okay, if the length for this space right here is 5 meters, I need the whole thing across, and the length for this part right here is 4 meters. I said to myself, okay, if this is 5 and this is 4, together that means that this length is 9 meters. So my length was 9 meters. My width was 12 meters, that never changed. And my height was 5 meters. So 9 times 12 times 5, I did 9 times 5, got 45. 45 times 12, I did my standard algorithm again, and got 540. So I added together over here 540 plus 384 to get a total volume of 924 meters cubed. All right, congratulations on day 2 of composed figures in volume. Go to Canvas and take your quiz. Please make sure that you fully understand how to find the volume of a composed figure before you go take this quiz.